Okay, so if you have a Porsche Boxster and you get a check engine light, you scan the codes, you get a P0410 and a P1411. It's for the secondary air injection. I'm going to show you how to diagnose and fix that, and I put a lot of work into figuring this out. And I talked to a Porsche mechanic at a shop that specializes in Porsche. Super detailed. I'm going to show you step by step how to diagnose all the parts. The first thing I'm going to show you this basic diagram and explain how it works. The purpose of the secondary air injection is on a cold start, when the engine's really cold, it just forces oxygen down before the catalytic converters, help it burn off the excess carbons. And so here's a pump here, and basically it just runs for the first maybe 30 seconds or even less when you turn your car on and it's totally cold. So this is the pump that pumps in the air, and then it pumps the air through here. Well, it just opens up during the cold start when this is on, and normally it's closed, but the way it opens, there's a vacuum line right here. This is an electric switch. The computer sends current to it during the cold start when the pump is on, which opens this up. This right here is connected to the air intake, so it pulls air down this way into the air intake when this comes on, and when it pulls air and creates a vacuum in this valve, it opens it up, and then the air can go through this one-way valve down here, and this valve is just supposed to be one way. This is a common thing that breaks, and it's only supposed to allow air into the engine going this way, not the other way. And then this here is just the metal thing that goes down to the engine block. This is a tube here that goes, I think it goes over to the other side, the other engine block. And then this thing here is a big plastic, just diaphragm thing. Basically it builds a vacuum and just stores it in there for right when the car starts. And there's also another diagram here that has all the parts on it and the part numbers over here. I'll include links to both of these. This is the site DC Automotive. Just don't order your parts from here, because I actually found out the hard way. I just found it on a forum like this. I didn't know anything about the site, ordered them because they were cheap, and it turned out they were used parts, and you definitely don't. The only part you'd want to buy used is your pump if that's broken, because it's probably a few $100s new. It's right on top of the engine. It takes 10 minutes to replace. That I would get used from here. You'd pay a little more than eBay, maybe $20 more because you have to pay for shipping. It's right here, but it comes with a 90-day warranty, so that is the thing that I would order off this site. And I ended up ordering them all new off eBay, and what I did was just try searching the names that were on here along with Boxster, and then the part numbers on here along with Boxster. You can copy and paste the part numbers, but just delete the periods in between the numbers when you search on eBay, and I'll leave links to the cheap parts that I found on eBay also. It can help to have one of these vacuum pumps. I picked it up at Harbor Freight for like 20 bucks. You could order a similar one off Amazon, I'm sure, for maybe even cheaper. And it's just a brake bleeder pump. So the first thing to do the diagnosis is you're just going to take this engine cover off. Then you're going to pull this sensor out and pull this back, so you have better access to the one-way valve. And you can see the valve right down here and the vacuum line that's coming off of it. And then you can actually remove this valve without taking the intake manifold off. There's these the clamp things that hold the hoses on. You can stick a flathead screwdriver, one on this side, one on this side, and you can actually pull it out down here to get that out. So, but anyway, this is the pump right here. This is the hose coming off the pump that sends air through that check valve. And basically what you're going to want to do is just start your car when it's cold after you get this engine cover off. Make sure it's cold. And you're gonna run back here, make sure the pump is running. You could pop the hose off first if you want to. You'll feel a lot of air shooting out of here. It should shoot out really strong and you'll hear it running. But if your pump isn't working, what you're gonna wanna do is disconnect these wiring harnesses here. You just squeeze on the sides here, pull it off. You can see which one's positive by the more red cord here. And what you can do is just run some wires from your battery, from positive and negative, put it on to here, and see if the pump runs. If it's not running, then your pump is broken, so you just need to get a new pump. But if your pump is running when you plug it into the wires, but it wasn't running during the cold start, then you could have a problem with the wiring harness that's going to the pump, or there could be a fuse or a relay out, or there could be a problem with like a engine temperature sensor, a problem with the ECU sending the signal to the pump to turn on. So the first thing you're going to want to do is just inspect the wires going to the pump, make sure they're not broken or anything. You're going to want to find where the fuse and the relay are for the pump, see if those are good, and then if everything is good there, then you have a problem with the ECU or some temperature sensor or something, but those problems should be pretty rare. And also, if you want to see a video on how to remove the pump, I show that in the beginning of my intake removal manifold video, so just look in the comment section. I'll put a link to that. And then another thing that you're going to want to check is you can pop the vacuum line off, and you should be able to feel a strong suction on it, the vacuum. So if you stick your finger on it, this thing should stick to your finger strong enough to just hold, to just stay with your finger when you move your finger around. And when I took mine off, it wasn't like that. You could barely feel just a tiny bit of suction through it. When I replaced all the parts, I could feel a really strong suction. So if there's not a strong suction there, it's not going to open up that valve and allow this air to get pushed through it into the engine block. And so if you don't feel strong suction there, you're going to have to go ahead and remove the intake manifold and look at the parts under there. So if you're not getting a strong vacuum, there's a few problems that could cause that. It could just be one of these vacuum lines is just disconnected, just fell off. Could be the vacuum lines are clogged, or these are all plastic here, they could be broken. These rubber things can wear out and lose vacuum. This electronic switch here could be broken and not working, not turning on and allowing the air to flow through. This plastic diaphragm thing can be broken and could cause a vacuum leak. I assume this valve here could also be clogged and broken. So when you take this apart, also be careful taking it apart, since these lines are plastic. It's really easy to break them. I did. And you're going to want to go ahead and blow through all the lines and these rubber things to make sure they're not clogged. You can test these rubber things with a vacuum pump if you want. And then another cause it could be, that would be rare, is if you test the switch and all this stuff and it seems okay, and test the switch is working, there could be a problem with the wiring going to the switch. So inspect that, make sure there's no breaks in the wires, or there could be a problem with the ECU for some reason not sending a signal to the switch. So if your pump is running and you're feeling strong suction off of the vacuum line, what you're going to want to do next is get this valve out of here. Like I said, there's flathead screwdriver. You might have to stick a flashlight down there to see it good, but I'm going to take the valve out and then show you how you can test that. So here's what these hose clamps look like. You can either use like a small flathead like this, or actually you can use a 6mm socket too. Alright, so here's this check valve. Here's what it looks like when it's out of the car. And here's where the vacuum line gets attached, and then the pump pushes the air through that way. So the way to test it is just try to blow through it with no vacuum line attached, or not without a vacuum line attached, but without suction vacuum being applied to it. Try to blow through it. If you can blow through it, it's broken. Also, if you see a bunch of black carbon nasty buildup here, you know it's broken just by looking at it. And then what you can do now to test that it works is take your vacuum pump, apply some vacuum to it. You should kind of hear a thunk when you apply the vacuum to it of it opening. Now try to blow through it. You should be able to blow through it now. So if you can't blow through it with no vacuum and you can blow through it with the vacuum applied, you know this is working, and you know that your bad parts are the other parts down here. Alright, so to get this hose off, you just squeeze on this with a pair of pliers and then yank on it. Alright, so first you're going to remove, there's two bolts. There's one right here and one back here, and they're both 10mm. Next you're going to remove the wiring harness. There's just a metal thing that you push down on here, and then it'll pull off. And there's a little green rubber seal, and it fell out of mine, so make sure you don't lose that. Next you're going to remove it from this metal hose that goes into the engine. You're going to turn it that way. I think it's 21 or 22mm. I use my adjustable wrench, so hard to tell, and then it'll unscrew out of there. Okay, now you can completely remove this whole thing, and the bladder is just attached with this screw. And to remove the electric switch, there's a hole here. The plastic thing, you're just going to push down on it, and then you pull it back that way, and it'll slide right off. Alright, so to get this thing off of here, what I did was take these vice grips, put them on the outside of this, take another pair of pliers, put them in that hole, put them on the ground, and just pressed on this, both of them really hard. Oh, and there's a little washer on this, I just realized, so don't lose that. Alright, so really if you went through the trouble of taking the intake manifold off, you're gonna just want to replace this, and the switch. It cost me $140 for all of them new, but I'll show you how to diagnose them all anyway. So with this thing, the job is to only let the air in one way. So if you see all this black carbon buildup in the top here, like mine, you already know it's broken. But to test it, so it's only supposed to let air into the engine, so from this part going down into the threaded part, so you can blow through it that way, make sure the air blows through. But then if you blow through it on this side and the air goes that way, then you know it's broken, so you're gonna want to replace that. And the way to test this, since normally in a car if you could reach it you could test it just by doing a cold start, but what you can do is, the job of it is to close off, but then during the cold start when the pump is on, it's supposed to let vacuum, and the air should travel, just be able to travel through these when power is applied to this. So what you can do is just hook your vacuum hose up to the end here, and then it should be able to hold a vacuum, and then just connect some wires to your battery and then just apply them to this, and it says right on the sides here, this one's negative and this one's positive, and it should hold the vacuum, and then right when you connect the wires to it, the vacuum should immediately go away. It should let the air right through. So if it does that, you know it's working. And basically the job of this is just to store vacuum for when the car first turns on, I guess. And to test it, you just run a vacuum hose to it, and then you could also use one of these little ones here from the car, but just before you use it, just test this first to make sure this actually holds a vacuum. Do that, you connect the vacuum pump and just hold your finger over it, make sure it doesn't leak real bad, but better just to use a brand new hose. But you're just gonna hook up your vacuum pump, and mine is completely broken, as you can see. It won't hold any vacuum. And I'll show you on the new one here what it should look like. At first it builds the vacuum up really slow, so when you're testing it, just do it a bunch of times. As you can see with this new one, it holds the vacuum fine. And also, the guy that worked at a mechanic that worked at a specialty Porsche shop told me that you should just definitely go ahead and replace this anyway, because he said that they put one back together with the old one. They tested it with a vacuum, it held a vacuum, and the check engine light came back on. They tested again with water and it actually had a leak in it. So even if you test this, it could be bad. I think it was only $30 new off eBay, so you should definitely just go ahead and buy this anyway. And then there's also another little one-way valve here for the vacuum line. And you can check this one too just by blowing through it. And the air should flow from the white side out the black side, but not the other way. So you can blow on the white side, it should go through that way. If you blow on the back side, it goes through the other way. That means it's broken. You need to replace this also. And then also, since you have everything apart, you might as well like spray some carb cleaner in this thing, clean all the carbon out. And then another problem you can actually have is the ports in here can get clogged with carbon and not allow the air to get through. And I think it's pretty rare. The Porsche mechanic told me he's only seen that 2 times before, and usually when that happened, you only get the engine code, the OBD2 code for one of these. So if you have 2 codes that's for both sides, it's probably not the problem. But if you have an older car with higher mileage, or when you take these parts off, there's just a lot of chunks of carbon coming off. Since you have it apart already, you might as well go through and clean this out. The way that you want to do it is you just spray a bunch of carb cleaner in there. And the Porsche mechanic told me you're going to want to take the exhaust manifold off on the bottom, lift the car up, and then spray a bunch of compressed air through here, and then take a coat hanger and jab it up through the holes on the bottom where it is. It's a good idea to do that if your car is older, has higher mileage, a lot of carbon buildup. And then if you didn't break any of these plastic lines like I did and you want to reuse them, oops, you're gonna just want to replace all of these things. I mean, you can test it with the vacuum pump, but they're rubber, you wear out, you should just replace them. And then this one as well. And I think these things are really expensive. It looked like it was like $20 just for this. And another thing, the Porsche mechanic told me when you do buy these, test the brand new one by blowing through it, because he said he got one once straight from the factory, a brand new one, and it was clogged, brand new. So test them by blowing through it to make sure they're not clogged. And then also when you reuse these, just blow through them with your mouth, make sure none of these are clogged also. But what I did, since I didn't want to order those Porsche parts, is I just went to my local AutoZone and bought some vacuum hose, and then bought one of these plastic T-splitters. And then, you know, where the lines, you could also buy this just to replace these things probably too, if you wanted to, and use that. And then what I'm gonna do, since the only spot where you need the plastic line to go into the manifold here, since it sticks in, I'll just break off a piece of the end of it or use the plastic part just for there where it goes in. And here you can see how it looks with the new vacuum hose rigged up. Just got the plastic T here. Here's this. And then for this part I use the original plastic line, because you need that skinny part to go into the intake. And I just used a really short piece of my new hose to connect the end of this to the plastic line. And another thing you can do, actually the Porsche mechanic told me he likes to do this, is if you break those old plastic lines, you can just use a short piece of this to like band-aid it together. And then down here, since this part could come in contact with the engine, I bought some bigger tubing that this can slide into to put there just for extra heat resistance. And you could probably zip tie this part up into these hoses too to make sure it doesn't come in direct contact with the engine. As you can see, no check engine light, and I've driven it quite a bit and done a bunch of cold starts, so I don't think it's gonna come back on. Hey, so I hope that video helped you guys out. I put a lot of work into it. I looked a lot online. There really wasn't anything good on how to diagnose and fix this problem in a Boxster. And in case you're wondering, the parts that ended up being broken on mine were the plastic diaphragm reservoir thing. It had a leak in it, so it couldn't hold a vacuum. And then probably all the rubber ones were a little bad, but the T-splitter one, the rubber piece that hooked together different plastic lines, couldn't hold a vacuum at all, so there wasn't any vacuum created that opened the valve on top so the air couldn't get pushed in. And then the other thing that was broken was that one-way valve, the one on the bottom that's not activated by the vacuum. And I don't know if just that being broken would set off a check engine light. I don't think it would, but it might, I'm not sure. So it was those three parts that are broken on mine. And I put a new electric switch in it too. I tested the old one after, and I don't think it wasn't broken, but I couldn't. You might as well replace it anyway, since you went through all the work of taking it apart and everything. And you know, if it helped you out, please leave a like. It means a lot to me. And then if you want to see other videos like this, and I've also got videos on flipping cars, tool reviews. I'm gonna put all sorts of reviews, car reviews, really tons of car stuff, how to save money or make money with cars. So subscribe if you want to see more stuff like that. See you later.